Ilia Topuria fights Charles Oliveira in the main event of UFC 317 for the vacant lightweight title. And honestly, this is probably one of my most exciting stylistic matchups of the year. I think this is actually a more intriguing matchup than Topuria versus Islam Makhachev. And furthermore, I'm actually favoring Oliveira to win. Now, I well and truly understand that Charles does get hit, and that he gets rocked, and then he gets dropped, and that Ilia Topuria has just knocked out two fan favorites and he's going for a third. Ilia Topuria can very much win this fight. I want to get that out of the way. He could very, very well slime out Charles Oliveira. And I've listed my reasons for why or how we could do those things in my video that I've done previously. But I'm going to give my final prediction on the matchup, just how I think it's going to play out, what I think the result is, and just kind of the stylistic differences between the fighters and just what I think works in each of their favor. So, first things first, a lot of people are saying that Oliveira gets hit a lot and that Topuria hits very hard. And both of these things are true. But one thing that I think is very, very important is Topuria's power seems to be much, much, much more present on the front foot. Against Volkanovski, he completely backed him up to the cage before he landed that shot. If any other fighter at featherweight was caught in that position, they will get knocked out. Simple as that. Topuria had the offensive footwork and Volk was simply circling away, and Ilia had the shot selection to corner him and eventually land that KO blow. With Max Holloway, Topuria was able to slowly beat up the leg, and I feel Topuria has extremely underrated calf kicks. He was able to beat up the leg and slowly start forcing Max to switch stances incrementally throughout the fight. And when Max did that, there's obviously an opening, as when you switch stances, in the middle of switching stances, you don't have your feet under you and you're less defensively aware. So when Topuria fired off that right hander that hit Holloway, it did more damage as Holloway simply just wasn't prepared for the shot. And eventually Holloway backed up and he went for a knee, right? A strike on one leg. He wasn't as defensively sound, and Ilia Topuria was able to get the KO. Now, with Oliveira isn't a guy that scoots on the outside, trying to mind his P's and Q's and be overly technical with the footwork, right? That's simply not his game. Even when he's fighting technical, he's still Charles Oliveira. You saw against Michael Chandler, Oliveira, while patient and measured, he was still extremely aggressive, and Topuria's power on the back foot simply hasn't been showcased, and I don't think it will work very well if he's on the back foot, let alone against someone that is, quite frankly, much, much, much bigger than him, right? Obviously, there's the post of him next to Raul Rosas Jr. and obviously Oliveira next to Rosas Jr. And while camera angles and stuff can play into account, Topuria is never someone that I've considered to have a lightweight kind of frame. It just simply isn't the case, and his style doesn't exactly favor, having that extra weight. Volkanovski, for example, is a similar build to Topuria. Volk's probably a bit thicker. He used to carry a lot more weight than Topuria did. I don't think Topuria was walking around in his early 20s at 210 pounds. But Volkanovski's style is designed around minute distance management and really, really technical exchanges. So if he is outsized, he can still outskill his opponents. With Topuria at featherweight, Topuria is the bully. That's mainly how he pressures people forward. Slow incremental steps forward, using shifting footwork to offensively cut people off. And Oliveira has frankly grown into lightweight really, really well. And in that Chandler fight, and even against Dariush, he looked massive. He frankly is huge. And he has the kind of range that I think Holloway presented problems with, but with a lot more deadliness and a lot more variety in weapons. We saw when Topuria struggled is when people are mixing up attacks against him, right? When Volk was picking with kicks, then going off the knees and landing some boxing combinations, Max starting in and out, stomping on the leg, landing body kicks, landing elbows here and there. And even against Bryce Mitchell, right? Bryce was mixing up front kicks to the body and to the head, a few head kicks. He was digging to the body a little bit, right? Mixing things up against Topuria is a very, very effective strategy. And Charles Oliveira might just be the best offensive fighter in the UFC when it comes to just throwing everything in the tool bag at you. Oliveira is going to offensively push forward the entire time, right? So this fight is entirely dictated on who's going to pressure forward. And I think that fighter is going to be Charles, because Topuria's ways of pressuring forward are less diverse. Oliveira will attack with, front kicks to the body, lead teep marches, and just pure aggression, just throwing caution to the wind. That front kick to the body, I think, is extremely effective because Topuria is not only shorter, he takes little steps forward, and he's hunched over, right? When Topuria overextends or tries to move forward and punches, Oliveira's going to dig that front kick to the gut. And Oliveira's front kick isn't a push kick. It is a snap kick that really digs into the body. You see him use this a lot against Poirier and Gaethje, and these are really effective because Poirier and Gaethje are big power punchers that want to pressure forward. And while I do think Topuria is a bit more technically sound than both of them, just in the defensive department, I don't think it's by much, and I think because he's smaller and more hunched over, it's going to work really, really well. And Topuria's calf kicks, while extremely good, they have helped him a lot in his last two matchups against both Volk and Holloway. Oliveira has shown a very, very good ability to check kicks. That lead teep march mixed with the front kicks, and just he's very dynamic with them. You see against Gaethje, one of the best leg kickers in the sport, he wasn't really able to be effective. Oliveira was able to check the kick and then punch off of it really, really well and hurt Gaethje multiple times. Now, the thing is as well, Oliveira plays very, very well at all ranges, right? Holloway is gonna love sort of mid-range boxing, mid to long-range boxing exchanges. Volk likes the same thing, but he's less, genetically designed for those types of exchanges. It's just because he is really quick and he has very good eyes that he's able to get out. Oliveira, while he isn't, as quick, he doesn't have those kinds of eyes, he doesn't have that kind of footwork in terms of defensively, he is very, very, very good at just throwing everything at you and just being a lot smarter, right? From long range, Oliveira has his own leg kicks, his own knee stomps, which he's, shown very effective at. Some solid calf kicks of his own. Again, Topuria, I don't think has ever checked a kick in his life. And Oliveira has very, very good low kicks when he wants to use them. And I've seen him use them a lot against Chandler. I did a whole video on his improvements against Chandler. And, the calf kicks and the leg kicks in general, one of them. He also has a very underrated jab, a very long left hook. That right straight is an absolute piston. You've got the snap kicks to the body. But then in close, you have jumping knees, flying knees. You have the clinch, right? Oliveira beats people up badly in the clinch, in the tie clinch more specifically, less against defense. You saw against Dustin Poirier in that first round. Watch the fight as it goes. Watch Dustin's reactions after they clinch. You'll see Oliveira land a massive knee, and Poirier is immediately like, okay, get out. He lands those knees with such precision and power, it is insanely impressive, and he will break people apart like that. He mixes in elbows really well, and those collar tie uppercuts, I think, are going to be perfect against Topuria. If he starts trying to roll and dig with body shots, I think Oliveira is going to be able to grab a hold, knee, uppercut, as Topuria exits right hand, that sort of thing. Now, as well, Oliveira, other than the fifth round against Chandler, it's been a while since he's been rocked and hurt really, really badly. Just simple as that. And part of what got him hurt in these fights is just a sort of reckless abandon. And I've seen against, Dariush, against Chandler in the second fight, even against Arman, he really didn't have that kind of style. He was really a lot more calculated with his offense. Still extremely aggressive, extremely dynamic, very much a tornado of pain. But he was very, very mindful of how much he needed to pressure forward and when it was the appropriate time. And I think that sort of variety will help in his scenario and prevent Topuria from countering. Again, Topuria isn't very good as a counterpuncher or a defensive sort of fighter. Someone like Makhachev is great because he has really good eyes, really good distance management, and he's repeatedly shown some excellent counterpunching skills. And Gaethje and Poirier just bring that kind of fire. Topuria is a little bit like that, but on the more calculated end. Now, I don't see Topuria having success with the grappling. I don't think he is big enough or strong enough to impose himself. You've seen people like Volkanovski get very, very close to taking down Makhachev, but I don't think Ilia will bulk the same way into the weight class. I simply don't. And in terms of like strength base, I just don't think he'll take down Oliveira unless Oliveira really welcomes it. But even though I doubt he will, I really think Oliveira is going to be aggressive in this matchup. Now, Topuria could drill to the body hard. Those body shots do open Topuria up for, uppercuts and knees in the clinch, and I think Oliveira will do a large amount of damage very quickly because both fighters are going to pressure forward and they're going to get into a collision. And I do trust Oliveira's weapons a lot more. He's very good at actually grabbing a hold of people when he wants to clinch and staying defensively responsible and sort of rolling with punches. Someone like Holloway, he just simply went for a knee with his hands down, which I don't see Oliveira doing. Oliveira will, establish a good position in the clinch and then go for a strike or set himself up properly. And, after they collide, I think Oliveira is going to continue the exchange. I don't think Ilia will be prepared for that. And if they don't collide, and if it's just they're out in the open, I do see Oliveira having the advantage in terms of how to apply pressure. And I simply don't think Ilia is the same kind of fighter on the back foot. And I think, he's relied a lot on his physicality, his power, the undefeated record, simply just aura on being that forward kind of fighter. And, I think he's had good scenarios and he's an extremely good fighter. And he's done some incredible things, but I think Oliveira is just too much of a veteran. He's too well-rounded on the feet, and I think he's just going to nullify a lot of what Topuria does in an absolutely chaotic slugfest, where I do think Oliveira might get rocked. But I really just see it's sort of playing like Poirier versus Oliveira, and, where Topuria may hurt him, and then it's just a back and forth. It's an excellent round, but then towards the end of the round, those body shots start adding up. Those exchanges start getting a little bit longer. Oliveira has a lot of success with them. And eventually, they get in the clinch. Topuria tries to pummel over shots. Oliveira lands a good knee. Topuria pulls out of the exchange. Oliveira goes for a right hand, lands it as Topuria is coming out of the pocket, gets clipped, goes down. Oliveira either goes for ground and pound depending on how hurt Ilia is, or he just goes for the sub. And I do think the Charles will win by first or second round finish, right? I think it's going to be a very chaotic fight for as long as it lasts. But I do see, more calculated aggression from Oliveira, and I think he will spoil Topuria's lightweight debut. Now, again, Topuria can win, and please feel free to make fun of me if he does knock Oliveira out in round one, but I really can't wait for this fight. I think it's a really interesting stylistic matchup. I think Islam had a lot of the tools to beat Topuria, right? I've seen Topuria taken down. I've seen him outstruck at range, and I think Makhachev is a big 155er, and I think he's already accustomed to fighting, smaller guys here and there, and I think he would be really comfortable fighting Topuria. I don't understand really technically the perspective of Topuria beating Makhachev. Sure, he has the, the knockout power, the boxing offense skill, but I was never really on that bandwagon of, Topuria is going to be the guy to, knock out Makhachev. I never really thought that. But regardless, he does present some really interesting challenges for Oliveira and Oliveira to Topuria. This is, if it goes past round two, it will be a fight of the year. It is a great matchup, and I think fans should be very grateful that we got this, aside from Islam versus Ilia. It really is a great matchup to headline International Fight Week. So, Oliveira, round one, round two finish. If you guys enjoyed the breakdown / discussion, leave your thoughts down below. Leave your thoughts on the matchup as well. I'd love to have a discussion with all of you guys, get your thoughts on the matchup, that sort of thing, see where people are leaning to. I would advise against betting on this matchup. I generally don't advise betting in MMA, but, put your money where your mouth is. But anyway, guys, see you later.